What's going on, guys? Welcome to Andy's History Lessons. Hold on, I'm just gonna do a little bit of readjustments. Okay, so this is the first episode of Andy's History Lessons, where I give brief history lessons, pretty much talking about predominantly warfare history, like the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Cold War. And I figured today we would start off with a war that not many people know about, which is the First World War. The reason why not many people know about this particular war is because it's not taught as frequently as the Second World War. A lot of people don't know how World War I started. The way that World War I started was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You had Serbian nationalists asking for independence from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So what happened was on July 28th, 1914, a Serbian nationalist attempted twice to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He first attempted to assassinate him by throwing a bomb at the car that him and his wife were riding in. The bomb missed its target, which was Franz Ferdinand's car. The second time, as they were coming out of the royal palace, the assassin pointed a pistol at Franz Ferdinand and shot him and his wife, killing both of them instantly. The assassin was captured by the Austrian authorities, and it was confirmed that he belonged to a terrorist organization that was asking for Serbian independence from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. After that, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. However, thanks to Grigory Rasputin's connections with the Russian Tsardom, the primitive Russian army got involved in the First World War because they were allied to Serbia. So basically, Serbia was allied with Russia. So when Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, automatically Russia had to get involved, whether they liked it or not. This also dragged Germany, known at the time as the Prussian Empire, into the First World War. Here's a little fun fact. Nobody at the time of the First World War called it the First World War because they did not expect another World War to happen 21 years after the First World War ended. They called it the Great War, and many Europeans feared the Great War. There's even a transcript in the documentary World War I in color, where you can hear a letter from a soldier, and the soldier is saying, "War, the Great War. No, it cannot be true." The First World War not only led to the explosion of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but it also led to the fall of the already dying Ottoman Empire, one of the oldest empires in the history of the world. It also saw the end of the German Empire, the Prussian Empire, and the reformation, or should I say formation, of a lot of European countries, such as the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Serbia, Montenegro, the Republic of Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Slovenia, Poland, and a couple others. Germany itself was greatly reduced in size after the Treaty of Versailles. Now, a quick side note, please do not post any, "Oh, what if America joined the war for the German side?" I don't want to see comments like that in the comment section. I don't want a whole political upheaval in the comment section on my channel. Alright? Capiche? So, then what happened was Germany knew that Russia was a member of the Triple Entente. So, Kaiser Wilhelm II tried to gain access to the quickest route into Paris, which would which would force France out of the war. France would have surrendered if the city of Paris had fallen. So what he did was he attacked Belgium. He originally tried to just peacefully cross through Belgium into France. But the plan that they had, where they had everything planned out, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. Oh yes, the Schleifen plan. The Schleifen plan failed because they did not move quickly enough through Belgium. They didn't even plan to attack Belgium. What happened was Belgian civilians took up arms and found the Germans in there, thinking that the Germans were trying to take over Belgium. So they started shooting at the Germans fired back, and that halted the invasion of France because of the Belgian civilians taking up arms. Another thing that happened was apparently Kaiser Wilhelm II did not know the independence of Belgium was guaranteed by the United Kingdom. So if Belgium was attacked by another world power, England would have to barge in and save Belgium, because they were saying, do not touch this country. We are making sure this country stays free. And if you say otherwise, you're going to be sorry. So that's what happened. This is all going on in 1914. Now, from 1915 to 1918, you had a stalemate. Neither side could really advance. You had what was known as the War of the Sea, which was to seize all the ports, such as the Battle of the Marne, which is where Germany tried to seize a part of France that would allow them access to the sea, to the English Channel and stuff like that. If Belgium had not fallen, then they would have to come up with another way to gain access to the English Channel to possibly invade England. The Battle of the Marne was a stalemate battle. It ended in an Allied victory. Germany was actually outnumbered. On the Western Front, it was 3 against 1. It was the Belgians, French, and English versus the thinly stretched German army. You had half of the German army in Russia fighting the Russians, and then you had, over on the Western Front, the remainder of the German army fighting against 3 different countries. And another thing, the reason why the Ottomans got involved in World War I was because of a skirmish. Ottoman ships were patrolling I think it's called the Black Sea or the Red Sea, one of the two. They were patrolling that area. They spotted some Russian ships, and those Russian ships were sunk by the Ottoman patrols. The Kaiser asked the leader of the Ottomans at the time if they would get involved in the First World War, if they would join the Central Powers, which was Austria-Hungary, Germany, the Ottomans, and a few other nations. I believe Bulgaria was part of the Central Powers. I could be wrong. There's all sorts of things that went on in this timeline. If I messed up on some of my stuff, please correct me. I'm okay with taking constructive criticism. Okay, so after the Ottomans got involved in the First World War, that also led to Russia's defeat in the First World War. In 1916, you had one of the bloodiest battles in the First World War, the Battle of Verdun. The Battle of Verdun ended with the Germans suffering 400,000 casualties, half of them being killed, the other half being captured. And the French and British suffered equally as grandiose casualties. Now, this was a new era for the entire continent of Europe. They had just developed all sorts of new weapons. They had dragged each and every one of their nations into the modern age except Russia. The primitive Tsardom of Russia at the time was still stuck in the medieval times, practically. So basically, if Russia did not get involved in the First World War and instead did the smart thing and declared neutrality, then perhaps Europe would be shaped differently. It would end in a German victory. Now, there is that gigantic misconception that Germany was Nazis back in the First World War days. That's not right. The German Empire, the Prussian Empire, call it what you want to, they were a monarchy. What that means is they had the Kaiser. Kaiser is German for emperor. So they had the Kaiser, the king, the emperor. He ruled over all the German people in all the nations and states that they owned at the time. So yes, they were not a Nazism. Now, to get the whole Nazism thing out of the way, after their defeat in the First World War, Germany became a democracy. The democracy failed because of the hyperinflation that happened in Germany after the fall of the First World War. That happened because they lost all their economical trade points after being dissolved, after their empire was dissolved by the Treaty of Versailles. So yes, it was because of Germany's defeat that they suffered a crippled economy. Then in 1917, Russia officially surrendered to Germany. Germany did not take any states from Russia. They didn't annex any lands from Russia. Russia just pretty much signed a peace treaty with Germany and Austria-Hungary. This is because in 1917, you had the Russian Civil War between Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks and the royal family, the Tsar Nicholas II and his wife and his children. So you had the royalists, we'll call them. You had the royalists versus the newly emerging communists, led by Vladimir Lenin and the Bolshevik army. So after Russia was done, Germany desperately tried to reinforce the Western Front, but they could not do that. At that point, they had suffered so many casualties that they could not advance. They were stuck in those trenches, getting pushed back. However, the Allies were also doing pretty sloppy themselves. The French army, at certain times in the war, would turn to mutiny. The soldiers would refuse to fight, which would lead, by default, to an Axis or to a Central Powers victory. Another thing you had going on was you had the Germans fighting dirty. By 1915, they were using poison gas, a very, very, very deadly new weapon. One of the most terrifying weapons of the First World War. In 1917, as I said, Germany was being pushed back. A prime example would be, let's go 1 year back to 1916, the Battle of the Somme. In the Battle of the Somme, the English suffered 620,000 casualties. They pushed the Germans back 2 miles. They advanced only 6.5 miles. And like I said, they suffered over 500,000 casualties. The French, however, suffered only 350,000 casualties, so half as much as the British, and they advanced nearly twice as far. They advanced 10 miles, and they probably pushed the Germans back further than the British did. In 1918, the Allies officially broke through the German lines and pushed them back after the Americans got involved. What made the Americans get involved was the sinking of the Lusitania ship, which killed, I believe it was about 210 people on the Lusitania sinking. The Lusitania was a medical ship. The Germans thought that they were supplying the Allies with weapons, ammo, food, you name it. So they sunk that ship out of paranoia that they were resupplying the Allies. So that's what led to the United States getting involved in World War I. Now, the United States, yes, they were a superpower at the time, but they were not equipped to fight a modern war, or as modern as the Great War was at the time. They had machine guns, but they didn't have enough machine guns. The machine gun was the terror weapon of the First World War because of no man's land. It was a 50-yard stretch of land between your trench and your enemy's trench, and you run straight towards the enemy trench. So imagine you've got your rifle, you're going over the top of the trench, you're running 50 yards straight towards the German trench, or let's break away from World War I. Let's say it's Poland versus Czechoslovakia, and you're Czechoslovakian. So you're running towards the Polish trenches and vice versa. And while you're doing that, you hear you hear the machine gun going. You hear your comrades screaming in pain as the bullet rips through them. You hear the shells whistling. You hear these explosions that shake the very ground. And if you survive that, then you have an angel watching over you. Going over the top was the single most terrifying thing for the soldiers in the First World War. However, way before the war took a turn for the worst, in Christmas of 1914, you had the Christmas truce. Now, I'm sure this is something that a lot of people know about, the Christmas truce. What happened was everyone was sitting there in their trenches, but all of a sudden, there was no more gunfire, no more mines going off, no more artillery, nothing was going on. They were taking a break from the fighting. Suddenly, the British hear Silent Night, or Stille Nacht, being sung in German by the Prussian soldiers. After that, the British started singing O Tannenbaum in response to the Germans. Everyone started getting out of their trenches. They were bringing gifts. The French brought wine, they brought cakes, they were exchanging cigarettes. It was Christmas. They were being friendly with each other. They shook hands with each other. Mind you, they're on opposite sides getting ready to kill each other. And then all of a sudden, well, let's take a break just because it's Christmas. You may be asking, why did they stop fighting just for Christmas? Well, Kaiser Wilhelm announced that you will all be home by Christmas. This war will be over by Christmas of 1914. Well, Christmas came and went, and they were still slaughtering each other. It was a horrible time. It rained almost every night during the First World War. Every day and night, rain pouring down. You're sloshing around in the mud. You're up to if you're not up to your crotch, you're up to your neck in mud. It was horrible. You had disease killing people in the trenches. You had rats stealing food from the soldiers. The soldiers in the German side, the Germans ran out of real food, so they had to make pseudo food, fake food. They made like potatoes, like fake potatoes or something like that. I don't know how they did it, but they mixed the pseudo potatoes with real potatoes, whatever real potatoes they had left over. And the way they cooked it was they used the fat that they got from boiled down rats as a way to cook their fake food. Yeah, it was horrible. The German army really had no choice but to surrender after they were being starved to death by the naval blockade put in place by the gigantic British Navy. This British Navy still remained grandiose well into the Second World War. By 1918, November 11th of 1918 at 11 o'clock p.m., Germany officially surrendered to the Allies. And this concludes our history lesson of the First World War. Okay, guys, we're done. So, please let me know what you think. Write down in the comments if I messed up. Again, I know I sound like a broken record. I'm good at taking constructive criticism. Tell me what I should do different. Tell me what I should keep doing and everything. And also, whenever I can, I'll be doing a special called Sensitive Saturdays, where I talk about sensitive subjects such as Nazi Germany during World War II and the Holocaust, or perhaps the entirety of the American Civil War. The whole thing is considered a sensitive subject. Again, political stuff, please put that aside. Okay, that's it. I'm signing off. Good night.